While I am humbled by, yet sometimes not so sure I'm always the qualified one to ask, I receive a lot of inquiries. I believe it is due to my years of experience in the ministry and the gospel music community, as well as being the owner and operator of the website gospelsongwriter.com. It has become common for those in the ministry and the industry to inquire of my opinions and insights, and to use me as a sounding board. And I'm okay with that, as long as they respect me and honestly consider what I have to share with them. Some questions I am often presented have to do with songwriters and their status in the industry. This is, and should be, in my opinion, a legitimate concern for all involved in the gospel music community. One of my pat answers is, it is obvious that gospel songwriters have very little presence in the gospel music industry. Thus, we are easily walked over instead of having to be climbed over. And whose fault is that, you might ask? Believe it or not, it is our own fault, we the songwriters. Now, please hear me out before you turn me off. Similar to medicine, truth can be distasteful, but beneficial. Have you ever wondered why we gospel songwriters do not have an association, or a group website, or a magazine, or a television show, or a radio show, or whatever else that would be beneficial for us? Has that ever crossed your mind? There is a reason for these deficiencies. I remember back in the early 1990s, while doing some homework and considering trying to organize a Gospel Songwriters Association, I inquired of the late J.D. Sumner about why we did not have a Southern Gospel Songwriters Association. With Mr. Sumner being an industry icon, as well as a prolific songwriter, I figured he would be a good one to pose this question to. I was slightly stunned by his reply, which only consisted of 5 words. He said, "Because we can't get along." We don't have an association because songwriters cannot get along with each other was not the answer I was expecting. In time and via experience, I came to realize Mr. Sumner was exactly correct. I knew songwriters were and are often cheated and mistreated by some publishers and artists, and we songwriters are quick to make that fact known. But I was unaware at the time that many songwriters were and are at odds with each other and seldom support their fellow gospel songwriters. A few months after Mr. Sumner's revelation, several professional songwriters did manage to put together the Southern Gospel Songwriters Association. I was a charting member and attended the first meeting. The meeting was euphoric until a certain songwriter entered the conference room. I was shocked as the writer sitting next to me came unglued and verbally assaulted the late arriving guest. Obviously, they had issues. I thought we were about to witness a literal knockdown dragout right then and there. It was a very unpleasant and chilling, revealing event. And I promise you, these aren't the only 2 writers at odds with each other. As time went on and I began producing and teaching songwriting seminars and created several websites including gospelsongwriter.com, I was flabbergasted and dismayed to discover that many songwriters flat out refused to support those who support them. Surely this was not true, but alas, it was and it is. Believe it or not, gospel songwriters as a whole have a reputation of not supporting those who support them. This is not just hearsay. I know by experience. I have personally spent countless hours and thousands of dollars to provide products and services, advertisement, and representation for songwriters, often asking nothing in return but that they simply be blessed by my sacrifice and labor of love. Yet, on the occasion when I did need their support, Most of them acted like me, my ministry, and my provision for them never existed on planet Earth whatsoever. It was as though I somehow became totally invisible and mute. When I launched Gospel Songwriter magazine, very few songwriters subscribed. The editor of the Singing News magazine, Danny Jones, personally told me it was the best upstart magazine he had ever seen. Yet, only after 2 issues, I had to abandon the magazine. When I launched the Gospel Songwriters Directory website, no writers subscribed. When I offered a songwriters demo service several years ago, only 3 writers showed any interest. Currently, at this recording, Larry Petrie and I are providing a demo service. And guess how many writers have placed an order thus far? Only 3. Also, consider this. Several years ago, I had 330 songwriters using GospelSongwriter.com. During that time, I lost my job and decided to ask my writers for donations in order to help the GospelSongwriter.com ministry, as well as our advertising budget for their sake, in order to bring them more artists via my website for them to submit their songs to. Out of 330 writers, 300 of those writers decided they no longer wanted to use my website, simply because I asked for their support in order to help support them. At this recording, I have 66 writers using my website, and only 5 send monthly donations. As you can see, not much has changed. Please know I did not, I repeat, I did not post this recording as a means for soliciting your dollars. If you think so, beloved, you missed the point of this important message. By the way, the Southern Gospel Songwriters Association, it did not last long. Do you know why? Very little support. So, here's the deal, dear gospel songwriter. Until we songwriters learn to get along and support one another, and support those who support us, we will never be able to unify as a body. Thus, we will never have a lasting and effective presence in the gospel music industry. Thus, we will always be stepped over, cheated, and mistreated. United we stand, divided we fall. It will take a group of songwriters to make a difference. I am not implying you have to compromise your religion, your denomination, or your convictions, or your whatever, but we will have to come together as songwriters if we ever expect to successfully resolve our challenges and maintain the respect and benefits due us in the industry. It will not be easy, nor happen by itself. It will take time, effort, money, wisdom, and diplomacy, but it can be done. I am often questioned, and I usually answer. Now I ask you the questions. Do you really want it? And will you support it? And will you strive for unity? Or will the words of J.D. Sumner continue to be our indictment and our excuse when we face Jesus on Judgment Day because we can't get along? Thank you, neighbor, for listening to this message. May the Lord bless you and unite us is my earnest prayer.